Last week at the start of the homily, I warned you to buckle up because it was going to be a long one. We ain't seen nothing yet. Okay, everyone's heart just skipped a beat. Just kidding. I owe you a simpler one this week. There's an expression that says that actions speak louder than words. And this expression warns us that many speak impressive and convincing words and intentions that belie their actual behavior or actions. Some people, whether politicians, salesmen, or televangelists, are able to charm through inspiring speech that may not reflect their personal conduct or the outcomes of their works. The expression warns us not to take words too seriously on their own, but to see action before we evaluate the intentions of others. And this counsel has been lovingly offered to many people who have suffered abuse and yet return to relationships with people who constantly express their love and their intentions to do better while consistently doing harm. Today's scriptures, though, take this advice to another level. Not only do actions speak louder than words, but one can only evaluate a tree by looking at its fruit. Whatever the words or even individual actions of a person may be, the fruits of their collective words, actions, and most especially the virtue or vice present in their hearts will speak clearly in judgment. Of course, it's easy to apply these principles to judge the words, actions, and fruits of others. But today's gospel is as much about our own hypocrisy and the need to turn this discerning eye of judgment upon ourselves before we can dare to evaluate others. Fortunately, we're about to enter the season of Lent, which offers a wonderful time for not only critical self-evaluation, but a graced time to step back through our practices of extra prayer, asceticism, and charitable action. And these things aren't just about self-improvement. Lent is about much more than that. It's about God. But it is an opportunity to clear out what separates us from God and to create room for Him to bring us more fully through grace to be the people He has created us to be. So on this last Sunday before Lent begins, I'd like to offer 3 takeaways for our self-reflection. First, our speech matters. Sometimes the expression that actions speak louder than words can be wrongly used to excuse poor speech. In this mindset, words don't matter as long as actions are good. In other words, I can swear like a sailor, use crude humor, speak extremely, and be uncharitable and unmeasured in my speech as long as I do good deeds. However, the preaching of Jesus actually means to show us that our words, actions, and ultimately our fruitfulness reflect the true dispositions of our heart. As the letter of St. James says, if anyone thinks he is religious and does not bridle his tongue, but deceives his heart, his religion is vain. Therefore, we need not only to be charitable in action, but to learn to have control of our tongues. Not only does our speech, and that involves the written speech as well, beware use of the internet, not only does our speech affect and reflect our conduct and disposition, but a poorly controlled tongue can lead others to sin as well. Secondly, we are all too often quick to judge others without applying the same standard of critique to ourselves. In fact, sometimes the things that most irrationally irritate us about others can be those very attributes that we have ourselves that others mirror back to us uncomfortably. Nothing can void our words of meaning more quickly than hypocrisy. If others see that my own actions do not reflect what I say and profess to believe, then I will be deemed an untrustworthy witness. Parents often wonder why their children do not seem to value the practice of their Catholic faith. But if kids have heard one thing but seen behavior and priorities from their parents that undermine that teaching, then why should it be a surprise if they dismiss the advice of their parents? Said simply, we all need to practice what we preach. In any case, we should become aware of the fact that for every flaw we see in others, we have ones of our own that probably drive others crazy. The more we become honest in our self-knowledge, the more merciful we will become. After all, if God shows such incredible mercy and generosity to a sinner like me, then who am I to be such a harsh judge of others? Lastly, the readings tell us to look at fruitfulness. We should not look at the appearance of the tree or plant, but at the quality of fruit it bears. This certainly applies to evaluating the wisdom of others. A television evangelist or pastor who preaches charity and simplicity while living lavishly off the contributions of others should rightly cause scandal. For 2 centuries, communist and socialist philosophers have advocated for political and social reforms for the advance of human freedom. But every time their philosophies have been enacted, they've brought about human suffering, tragedy, and death at record levels. Perhaps the philosophies, and not just the actors, are flawed, as the Church has consistently taught. When looking at people's words, actions, philosophies, whatever they may be, we need to have a discerning eye. Likewise, we need to look at the fruits of our own attitudes and choices. What practices and priorities in our lives are actually bearing fruit in prosperity, greater sanctity, joy, and freedom? On the other side, what practices and priorities consume us without actually bearing any healthy fruit? Sometimes a tree or a plant needs pruning in order to be restored in health and to bear good fruit. Yet pruning must be done with care. When a rose bush is cut back, the cuts must happen in the right place and at the right angle. If you cut towards the bud, the moisture will flow to bring about rot on the blooms. A cut to the other extreme can cause the branch to dry out and die. Self-denial should not be done recklessly or indiscriminately in a harmful way, but if done carefully and intentionally, it can allow us to cut back in a way to allow for greater new growth. Where might I need some pruning during the Lenten season? Self-reflection can be humbling and frankly scary at times. No one enjoys looking too deeply at their own flaws. Sometimes facing our own sinfulness and imperfections can give us a fearful sense of impending judgment from God. But it should also give us a deeper appreciation of His grace and mercy. Elsewhere, the gospel reminds us that the master is patient in overseeing his fields. He prunes us, but he is not quick to cut down and uproot trees, even when the produce is lacking. Instead, he seeks to pour out his grace to nurture the tree and give it every chance. And so he is with us. God's patience far outpaces our own, and he seeks not our destruction, but our fruitfulness. This Lent, we have the chance to be pruned again through our own intentional action and through our cooperation with God's grace. Paul reminds us in the second reading that this effort will not be in vain. God does not leave us to figure out things alone, but offers us a chance to share in that victory that Christ himself has won. Therefore, we pray that this coming Lenten season may be fruitful for each of us, so that come Easter Sunday, we, along with Christ, can triumphantly ask, "Where, O death, is your victory? Where, O death, is your sting?"